People avoid HOAs up here in Montana, and it's usually for good reason. In this video, I'm going to talk about the different HOAs we have around here, what you need to look out for, and make sure to stick around to the end because I have a personal HOA horror story that will definitely make you laugh. So HOAs can be good and bad. The reason they're good is because they definitely keep your property values up as long as they have enough rules in there to avoid your neighbor putting in a junkyard next door or painting his house bright purple or something like that. So I can also see why people don't like HOAs because nobody wants a bunch of rules, but you know, there's obviously a give and take with HOAs. As you can see behind me, I'm up here at the ski resort today because I wanted to talk about the HOAs up here, because up here, with all these different condo complexes like you can see behind me, and all the different little housing neighborhoods and developments, they all have different HOAs, some of them more than one, so it's kind of complicated. And the reason I wanted to show you this particular area is because if you're going to buy up here or in a similar area, you definitely want to use a local bank, because I've had numerous deals fall apart up here at Big Mountain because an out-of-state lender or a national lender, say it's Wells Fargo, say it's Bank of America, somebody like that, if you're using them as a lender, that's fine until you get into an area like this and they just, for whatever reason, I've never been a lender, so I don't know the exact reasons, but all I know is that numerous deals have fallen apart because of the HOAs up here. And I think it's because, again, there's so many different condos, different complexes, different housing developments, and so many different HOAs that they all kind of overlap. Like one of them will do the roads and plow the roads, and others are in charge of the landscaping in the area. And I don't think these big national banks really understand how it all works, and they clearly don't like it because, like I've said, it's killed numerous deals up here. So if you are going to buy in an area like this, make sure to use a local bank, local lender, and make sure you do your homework up front and see what you're getting into before you get too far down the road, spend a bunch of money on inspections and appraisals, and then find out they're not going to finance it. What I've run into up here is many of the HOAs you're going to run into aren't that bad. They're basically just there to maintain the roads, make sure the roads get plowed, and they're not that strict at all. You just have to look into it beforehand and see exactly what they're doing, and it's also not a bad idea if they are a bigger HOA, especially if there's a community well. You want to make sure that they're financially stable and just kind of check into their finances. Obviously, they'll show you all that if you're looking at purchasing something, but it is something to keep in mind, and you don't want to get into an HOA where all of a sudden, for some reason that you weren't aware of up front, like if they have to put in a new well, or if they have to tie into the city water or city sewer for the whole neighborhood, something like that, it could be a huge expense and just a good thing to look into if there's an HOA on the property you're looking to buy. The reason I think a lot of people are turned off by HOAs is you always run into the one bitter old guy that wants to be the neighborhood cop and walks around with a notepad every night and makes sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. And obviously that can be a pain in the butt. So again, you want to talk to your neighbors, you want to talk to, as an agent, I'll do what I can to find out what it's like, and because I've been around here so long, I know the different neighborhoods and what they entail. So you just do your homework so you don't get involved in some craziness like I did. Let me tell you the story about what happened to us when we first moved up here back in the early 2000s. So this is not the gate in question, but I thought I'd give you a visual of how it all went down. So when we first moved up here, we bought a house in a small subdivision that it was kind of interesting. There was one way in, and then there was kind of like this fire road on the back end of the subdivision that you could get out and get into town. From where our house was, you could get into town quicker going out on that fire road. Well, the HOA president at the time and whoever else was on the board decided that they didn't want anybody coming in and out on that fire road. Well, I looked up the covenants and looked up all the rules of the HOA, and you can't make any changes, whether you're the president or not. You can't make any changes to the common area or something like this without 70% of the homeowners voting in favor of it. Well, what they decided to do, because they felt like too many people were using this back road, which was totally untrue, and they were, thinking that they were coming in and driving around our subdivision. Well, again, there was no reason for anyone to do that. And like I said, where our house was located, for me, that was the best way out. Well, in their discussions, they decided they're going to put a gate up to stop people from using that back fire road. Well, again, it brought into question a couple of things. I just said fire road. If there was an emergency and there was a forest fire coming from the one end and all of a sudden they got a gate up, that was like the dumbest idea ever. And secondly, for me personally, like I said, it saved, if I would go out the one way that everybody else was, it was an extra 2 miles to get into town where I worked at the time. So I always used that just because it was easy and convenient. And so when they gated it off, I explained, I said, hey, you can't gate this off without 70% approval. Well, the president claimed, yes, he can because he's the president, and they just did it one day. So me, being the little smartass that I was at the time, I went down there at night and, like on the gate, if normal gates, there's a padlock over on this side and it swings open. Well, they locked it, and of course I didn't have a key. So what I did is I came over to this end of the gate and I just brought my toolbox and I took the hinges off and opened it up backwards. Well, of course, the next day when the president saw what had been done, he had a hunch, he knew who did it, but he couldn't prove it. But anyway, he came up and knocked on my door and said, what did you do to the gate? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, there was this big meeting, and this is the hilarious part. So they have this big community meeting out at the gate to discuss this huge dilemma that we now have, that somebody took the hinges off the gate. And so during this meeting, I spoke up and I said, look, here it is in the covenants. You can't make this decision unilaterally without 70% of the homeowners voting on it. And I guarantee they're not all going to approve of this because I'm not the only one that uses this road. And the bigger thing was, like I said, to get in emergency equipment if needed, how now there's a gate. So again, terrible idea. So here's the classic part. So he stands up there and says in front of everyone, well, George Bush is president and he can put up gates in the national forest. Why can't I put up a gate in our subdivision? So that was his logic, and that falls into what I talked about earlier. You get some crazy people that can get on these HOA boards, and they, this guy thought that he had the same powers as the President of the United States, which is classic. But if any of you guys have some similar stories or, good HOA stories, please leave them in the comments. I enjoy laughing about them. This was over 20 years ago now, so I can, hopefully nobody will be watching this that was involved, but it was pretty funny at the time. But it just goes to show that you really need to be careful when you're buying into a neighborhood, and check the covenants, check the HOAs, just do your homework so you don't get in the middle of some crazy HOA drama.
Thank you for watching our video. Please call, text, or email for more information. And don't forget to watch our other videos about Montana.